Following the loss of my husband to complications with a brain tumor, I found myself becoming what I viewed as a worse father. I was too deep in my grief to attend to the grief and needs of my daughters. I thought it best to take a weekend to myself to tackle my own problems so I can be more present. So I called my older brother Oscar and his wife Lillian and nearly begged them to watch the girls for a few days. They obviously were happy to. They picked them up later that day, and I got to my process of healing, getting very drunk and staying in bed mostly. When Monday came, I got my shit together as best I could and waited for my brother to drop them off. I was prepared to help them work through whatever they needed. As the hours ticked by without them showing, I began to worry. I called my brother's phone probably 50 times. His stupid voicemail message became the soundtrack to my panic. "You've reached Oscar Fordeet. Leave a message after the 4 beep." Played out into the echoing walls of my house as I paced the halls. When the sun went down and I began to dial the police, a knock on my front door made me nearly jump out of skin. It was Lily. She looked very distraught. What I'm sure was mirrored thought she had upon seeing me. "Dean?" She looked me up and down. "He didn't show up, did he?" We filed a missing persons report for Oscar and the girls before the night was over. They weren't found. I obviously could not accept that the police stopped looking after a few months, so I began searching on my own, often but not always with Lily's help. In a few weeks, I had combed the woods around the school the girls attended, and Oscar's house, leaving no stone unturned. By this point, the people in my town that I had know my whole life had moved on with their lives and stopped dropping by to check on me, so I spent most days alone. One night, as I sat awake on my bed far too late to be awake, something struck my mind that baffled me as to why I hadn't thought of it already. My brother's last work site. He did freelance construction and was assembling a modular home out in the woods. The police had briefly looked over the place, but what about the woods surrounding it? Against my better judgment, I began to get dressed and look for my car keys. I should have waited until morning, but I was so determined to find anything, even a mild clue as to where they had went. I called Lily and asked her for the address, and she groggily gave it to me, and I was on the way. When I arrived, I used the flashlight on my phone to get a look around. Part of the modular was collapsed at the back, but I wasn't concerned with that. The police had probably checked that out already. I was more concerned with the woods. I made my way to the tree line. I could see from a distance there was a steep drop-off just beyond it. As I got closer, I could feel my ankle roll on top of loose dirt, and I fell forward and down the drop-off. I don't remember a lot after that. I remember unbearable pain. I remember waking up in the hospital the next day with Lily at my side. I had hit my back just right during the fall to paralyze myself from the waist down, but I honestly didn't care, not like I had much to live for anymore anyway. Instead, my mind stayed focused on that loose dirt. I couldn't explain why I was so fixated on it. It just felt important. With the new limitations of my wheelchair, I could hardly make it past my front yard, let alone to the site. Not on my town's dirt roads. After a week or two of pestering, I finally convinced Lily to go search the area. It was raining hard that day, of course it was. All the ground would be soft and muddy, just as I expected. She came back with nothing. I thanked her anyway, and it continued to eat away at me for days, which became weeks, then months and years. By the 3-year mark, I was basically just doing what was required to survive. I would eat, I would sit for hours, then sleep to start over. Lily had all but stopped talking to me by this point. My fixation was stunting her grieving process, so I respected her boundaries and lost her number. I had boosted myself out of chair and into bed, same as any other night. Just as I had began to dream, I heard a soft sobbing beside my bed. I opened my eyes to see a silhouette, hunched over, crying into its hands. I quickly flicked on my bedside lamp, and the figure shot. Its head up as it was bathed in the light. Its mouth hung open, and its eyes open wide as if staring into the eyes of God. It was my brother. He looked different. His thick but short, trim, neat blonde hair and well-groomed walrus mustache had been replaced with a dirty, raggedy mop of shoulder-length hair and similarly filthy full beard. His tattered clothes were covered in blood, as was most of his face. "Oscar?" I muttered. I'm so sorry.